Members of the media, good morning. Let me also take the opportunity to welcome the ministers here, Minister Davis, Minister of Trade and Industry, and Minister Patel, Minister of Economic Development. What we're going to do this morning, the Minister of Trade and Industry, Minister Davis, is going to talk to us about the various designations which emanate from the PPPFA. Some of you would know that we've got this Preferential Policy Framework Act, in terms of which certain goods and services must be procured from BEE and so on. So Minister Davis is going to talk to us about that. But before it does, I just also need to explain that, as you know, that the industrial policy of the country is pro-green and also has got some other areas of development. So we just thought that it's quite opportune that when we talk about climate change, these are practical apparatus that the country has to ensure that the green economy is not just theoretical. So our industrial policy does talk to methods of producing goods and services in line with the climate change requirements. So without any further ado, I'm going to ask Minister Davis to give us the input.
Okay, well, thank you very much, DG. Let me begin by saying that I believe that there is a press release that you should all have, which I think is giving some details on what's happened today. But in a nutshell, there were certain amendments to the Preferential Procurement Policy Framework Act, which were promulgated by the Minister of Finance in June, and they indicated that in that time that the new regulations would come into effect today, the 7th of December. So we're meeting today because the first wave of designations for local procurement or procurement from local companies will come into effect. And just to take a step back, the designations, as they're called, the regulations provide for the Department of Trade and Industry to designate according to various standards and various rules and regulations and various percentages that all organs of state in all spheres of government will procure from South African sources. And this is because we have seen that when we have been procuring, we have achieved too little local manufacturing input into infrastructure and other investment programs. We've seen that we have tended to have too much, at least 10% too much import leakage from these programs, and we have indicated in the Industrial Policy Action Plan that one of the objectives of the Industrial Policy Action Plan is to ensure that there is a higher boost to manufacturing from the infrastructure investment programs. And so what will come into force today is what we are calling the first wave of designations. And according to regulations with varying percentages, based on a lot of consultation, a lot of research, and a lot of discussion with procurers, the first wave of these designations will come into force. And you will see that the logic of them is the next round, if you want to call it that, of infrastructure investment programs, together with some regular purchases by state departments, which we will now be designating will have to come from local manufactured companies. And the sectors which will come into force in terms of the designation will be power pylons. The contracts for Medupi and Kusile have already been awarded, so that's water under the bridge, but it's the pylons, the transmission lines. It's railway rolling stock with the new wave of investments by PRASA and by Transnet. It's buses, particularly bearing in mind the new bus rapid transit programs in a number of municipalities. Then it's a number of regular purchases, some canned food items, some clothing, textiles, footwear, and leather products, essentially workwear, which is procured by different organs of state, as well as set-top boxes. And we're indicating that this is the first wave of the designations, and that there is work going on other designations. The same broad principles will apply as the infrastructure programs kick in. We will be designating inputs into the infrastructure programs, and we'll also be looking at a number of regular purchases by government departments. So I think our statement is saying that the designations have taken place against the background of extensive research. So we used the time from the publication of the new regulations in June for extensive research, a lot of consultation with all the government departments involved, as well as with industry. The National Treasury as well has been leading workshops with supply chain managers to make them aware of the new regulations. The designation process has also been supported by a South African technical specification, which we will eventually upgrade into a full-on South African national standard, which indicates the technical specifications for all of these. Now, I think my colleague, Minister Patel, will talk about this as part of a much broader national effort. We see this as one contribution, but a delivery by government in the Accord on Local Procurement, which we signed a few weeks ago. There were other commitments made by other social partners. This was but part of the commitment by government, which we are delivering on today. And it's part of, we think, a bigger and broader national effort where we use procurement decisions to support local production and local jobs. There is perhaps one point which I should also make, and that is that there has been some sort of a concern that this might be just going to support rent seeking. And I think that we've indicated that the procurement process itself will require procurers to focus firmly on price. We are looking to procurement officers to negotiate effective prices with local manufacturers. We are not looking to support rent-seeking behavior by local manufacturers. And we are indicating in paragraph 12 of our statement that the ultimate sanction that we have is that if we see this is the case, we can, if you want to use the word, undesignate those sectors again. This is not written in stone. It's part of our process of supporting industry, but seeking things in return. So we will be expecting industrial players who are going to benefit from the designations to also be coming to the party by creating jobs and by taking only normal returns and not trying to seek rents and abnormal payments from the state. And I think it's part of the process of trying to clamp down on wasteful and fruitless expenditure, and I think you've seen a number of interventions made by the Treasury in the past few days. We see this also as just one of several interventions to support manufacturing development in South Africa. It's just a part of the Industrial Policy Action Plan, but I think it's an important part of the plan which we believe can create confidence among local manufacturers that there is a future for manufacturing in South Africa. We are determined to ensure that our country remains a successful and significant manufacturing nation, and indeed that we are in a position where we can ride the next wave of industrial development or the next industrial revolution, which is the green manufacturing revolution. And we need to do that by building up, defending and supporting industrial capacity in our country. It is perhaps a happy coincidence that tonight we will be launching the South African Renewables Initiative, which is another one of the very important industrial policy action plan programs. And this is our renewable energy program. And you can see how there is a happy coincidence between our industrial policy objectives and our green objectives in that particular program, because what we are doing is we are seeking an ambitious level of renewable energy, precisely because that will offer the scale on which we can create industries in our own country and industries on the African continent that are going to be involved in the production of inputs into renewable energy generation. Also part of our program, just to say, yesterday I was at a function where we were talking about the Industrial Energy Efficiency Program and a particular standard called ISO 5001, where we are supporting our companies to become more energy efficient, and actually there are significant savings on the bottom line. So I just wanted to point out that this particular measure today, we think it's very important that we have met the deadline, that we have delivered what we said we were going to deliver. We set the objective. We said that when the 7th of December comes, this is not the date when we start the work on the designations. This is the date when we come in with the first wave of designations, and we are delivering on that today. So let me stop at this point and hand over back to the Chair. Thank you.
Minister Patel, you want to make some
Thank you very much, DG. I'd like really just to add 3 brief points to the statement made by Minister Davies. The first is that at the end of October, 5 weeks ago, we signed a comprehensive local procurement accord, which is a partnership between the business community, government, organized labor, and NGOs to ensure that we create a greater number of jobs. It's part of the new growth path that sets a target of 5 million new jobs by 2020. I'd like to emphasize, too, that what we're doing today with this designation is a key component of ensuring strong industrialization on the African continent, in this particular case in South Africa. And then thirdly, because this announcement is made here at COP17, I'd like to draw the link with the green economy and say that we see 300,000 new jobs in the green economy by 2020. 3 of the products that have been designated and that Minister Davies has made the announcement of today will strengthen our efforts in the green economy. The power pylons will assist in ensuring that the green energy, solar and wind is integrated in the national grid, that we create jobs not only in the generation but also in the transmission of that green energy. The rolling stock will assist us in ensuring a shift from the transport of freight by road to rail. And rail obviously has a significantly lower carbon emission. And thirdly, the designation of buses will assist in ensuring that we have a strong and effective public transport system that can reduce reliance on individual car ownership. So this is really part of a more comprehensive plan on jobs, but a significant component of that plan. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ministers. So we now open the session for questions. If you just, as you ask your question, just rise and introduce yourself. Okay, yes, sir.
Mike Lowe, reporting Development Africa. Thank you, Ministers. We've heard so much about the rise of greenhouse gases, the problems facing our world. Can you give us any indication of how all your new manufacturing efforts, which includes the 2 power stations which have come under so much criticism, are you going to be measuring in some way our trajectory in relation to our greenhouse gas emissions and all that kind of stuff in relation to your plans?
Okay, that's the first question. Another question. The gentleman in the front.
John Herskowitz of Reuters. It's more a question about South Africa's international reputation. We're here at a global conference, and the global headlines that South Africa has made in recent days concern a state secrecy bill that's been roundly criticized internationally as a way to punish those who try to expose government secrets. South Africa falling in Transparency International's rankings of perceived corruption, and most recently, the takeover of various provinces by the central government for mass incompetence that has led to millions of poor people not receiving the services that the government pledged to deliver them. Are you at all worried that this is the image South Africa has at this international conference?
Okay, as we go to the third question at the back, just a correction there. In South Africa, there is no such a thing as a secrecy bill. The bill, I suppose you want to refer to, is a protection of state information bill. There is no secrecy bill in South Africa. Yes, sir.
Chris Matembu from Buwa News. Minister, I'm just wondering, how will the new regulations impact on the country's ability to maintain foreign investment?
Thank you. Ministers.
All right. Well, I think, first of all, just in terms of measuring the greenhouse gases and things like that, the obligation on South Africa largely has been to undertake common but differentiated responsibilities, and not so far in terms of precise greenhouse gas targets. That's where we've been. And I think that in that framework, there are a number of initiatives which we are involved in terms of our industrial policy as well as the growth path, which are exactly designed to try to green our economy in a number of ways. I think I would put it this way, that what we have tried to see is the necessity to green the economy, not as an obligation, but as an opportunity. And I think that what we have been saying is that it's perhaps the next industrial revolution. It will be a range of green technologies, some of them in the generation of renewable energy, but many other products and services which are going to be now using greener technologies right across the board. And what I think we've been saying is that the last wave of industrial development, which was the ICT revolution, Africa and South Africa largely related to that as providers of services to somebody else's technology and somebody else's products. And I think this time round, we're determined that that should not be the case, that if we are going to make ambitious commitments on climate change, they've got to be such that we can at the same time promote jobs and that we can also achieve industrial development as well. And so I think that's the sort of framework. So, for example, when we launch the SARI this evening, you will see that we are committing ourselves to at least 42% of the new energy will come from renewable sources. And we've set that as a scale, which is an ambitious scale, in part because that offers us a sufficient scale of renewable energy generation that can support local industries. That's what we're trying to do in South Africa. And then I said the other part of it is that we are trying to support industries across the board to industrial energy efficiency. I mean, the figures, I saw the figures in preparation for the meeting yesterday. There's a sizable amount of emissions that come from industry and a sizable potential saving of CO2 that can come from industry efficiency. So we've been supporting that. We're also saying to all kinds of industries, for example, the motor industry, we are encouraging the motor industry to bring the production of energy-efficient vehicles to South Africa. We actually have a South African electric vehicle which is around as well. So I think that's the sort of broad direction that I think we see ourselves moving in. It does depend on us having an industrial. It does depend on us having an industrial capacity. It does depend on us also opening up to the African continent, and I think measures like the SADC COMESA East African Community are aimed at creating a sizable regional market that can support industrial development, not just in South Africa but elsewhere. And that South Africa is the most industrialized country on the continent, and that industrial capacity needs to be grown, developed, and enhanced. I think that's what it's about. Well, I would say that, there's International reputations and international reputations. I think many people have come here to this COP17 and they've seen a conference that has been organized at a very high level of quality, the same as we managed to organize the FIFA Soccer World Cup. I think that we have, for example, you can read the interventions in the provinces as a sign that there were problems in the provinces, but you can also read it as a sign of decisive action by the national government when presented with those problems to clean up problems where they arise. And I think that we've been very transparent and very open about that. I think that the fact that you have used the term secrecy bill means that perhaps you haven't read the bill in great detail, and I think that 99% of that bill is accepted as necessary. There are one or two issues which are controversial only, but among other things, which I don't know whether everybody's aware of, it will be an offence to classify material for the purposes of avoiding corruption, to misclassify material for the purposes of avoiding corruption. So if you do that, and you are caught, you will be subject to a penalty for corruption, but you will be subject to an additional penalty for having misclassified the information. So I think there are quite a lot of clauses in that bill which are not. I think that there are many international pieces of legislation which are more draconian in some respects. There are some contested clauses. There's a big campaign going on in South Africa, a huge debate. That's part of our democracy. So I don't think that our international reputation is on the line. I think many people who come here, we have a growing number of companies that come to South Africa because they know that the African continent is part of the world's growth story. Many of them are coming here. Many of them see that there are important and significant reasons why they need to be on the African continent. And then the last question, how will the designations impact on foreign direct investment? I think I should probably have made it clear when I was speaking that the definition of local means that it's a manufacturing operation in South Africa. It doesn't refer to the ownership. So foreign operations which are here in South Africa, manufacturing in South Africa, will qualify under the designations as local manufacturers. National treatment is the principle which we offer to foreign investors.
Okay, Minister Patel, you want to add anything?
No, I think my colleague has covered the issues very substantially.
Okay. Another round of questions to the lady in red at the back.
Good morning, Bryn Naidoo from Engineering News. If the ministers could just explain to me in terms of minimum level of local content, if we could just maybe put some numbers on that or specify around that. And then also, just how strongly driven were these designations in terms of growing our SME sector in South Africa?
Okay. Any other question? Okay, that will then conclude the session.
All right. Well, let me just say that the percentages differ product by product. I mean, for example, the percentage on the railway stock is 65%. There are different levels depending on the technical nature of the products concerned. Those are all part of the practice notes which have been issued to procurers, and also the subject of the standard setting process that I mentioned. So the percentages vary product by product, and it's the subject, as I said at the beginning, of quite intense research, quite intense estimations of where we have capacity. So we're not setting it on the basis of we wish we had the capacity to produce something that we absolutely manifestly don't have. It's where we think we have capacity and where if we took decisions in the right way, we could actually build and enhance that capacity. So that's the way it works there. There isn't in these particular designations any particular provision for SMMEs. There is but this is still pending for further discussion. There's an alignment with broad-based black economic empowerment, but that's still subject for some further discussion and debate and engagement with stakeholders as to when that side of it comes in. But I think that in terms of SMMEs, the approach which we've been taking as the DTI for a very long time is that we think that there are major opportunities for SMMEs by engaging with the industrial policy. And so we are looking to try to bring about more synergies between the industrial policy program and SMMEs. For example, we think that some of the more useful programs that we've had for SMME development have been incubation programs of one kind or another, where SMMEs have got together in some kind of particular incubator where they've had access to a means of production, they've had access to informal mentoring, they've had access to training, and they become specialists and skilled in a particular line of industrial activity. That's the kind of program we want to support. We think that in many of these areas there will be huge opportunities for SMMEs. I think just the names of the sectors will indicate those are the opportunities. Those are where the jobs are actually in the SMMEs in many cases. And so linked with this, we are working to try to transform the SMME support program as well.
Okay. Just to briefly add to that, I think the one point to emphasize is in our local procurement framework that we've agreed with the business community, there's a strong commitment to drawing in both small businesses, but also to strengthen the base of black entrepreneurs in the manufacturing sector. Some of the larger companies, in fact, a group of companies with a market turnover of some 350 billion rand have agreed to a partnership in something called the South African Supplier Diversity Council, where they will actively partner, mentor, support and incubate small and emerging black-owned manufacturers of goods as part of strengthening the industrial base for local procurement. But in making the designations today, it's important to underline what my colleague has said, that we need, as part of this, to strengthen competitive pricing policies, while we are setting out here a significant program of purchasing from local suppliers. We need to do so at prices that are affordable and that gives value for money to the taxpayer. That we need to eliminate collusive and unethical practices in the supply chain, tender rigging and so on. And we need to identify ways in which these supply chains, rolling stock, pylons and others, where we can extend those value chains to other sectors. So this is a partnership that we think can go beyond these products. With the rolling stock, for example, it's to get them to procure not only the stock locally, but also some of the supply inputs, the steel and so on. So it's really a coherent and comprehensive program of industrialization that this will unleash. Finally, on the question that was asked earlier, I'd like to just make the point. South African manufacturing has to go green. It has to go green not only because of climate change imperatives, very important as that is, and we've made commitments as the South African government, but also because the cost pressures of our coal-based energy requires greater energy efficiency. So when new production lines are set up, really we will work with companies to ensure greater energy efficiency. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ministers, members of the media. Thank you very much. The next session is about to begin. Thank you.